And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. Before European settlement in Canada, Indigenous people spoke a wide variety of languages. As a means of assimilation to Indigenous peoples, colonial policies like the Indian Act and residential schools forbade the speaking of Indigenous language. We begin this special two-part episode featuring updates of language revitalization projects at Prince Rupert's Nation to Nation Conference.
Scouts, today I'm going to share with you 133 words and phrases that are provided on this high LL vocabulary quick guide sheet. Scouts, Ixnaqua, Ixnaqua, Ixcanu, Siswela, Si Ixcola Susa, Suquala, Ifcolaskins, Cunwela, Cun Aish, Yachnaqua, Sims Ikya.
I'd like you to think back to your childhood or your early days of being involved in traditions and customs and obviously the language would have been spoken at that time. What does that connection to language and culture mean to you from an elder's perspective?
Well, just like Teresa said, that culture, tradition, everything is connected. It's all connected. What we do, what we say, how we treat people. Growing up, because my experience is different than Teresa's, because I speak the language fluently. And learned how to do different things, hunting and going out clam digging and going out fishing for halibut and going out for crabs and things like that. And that was all what we learned. And because when I was growing up, basically the female had a different role than the man, and they weren't allowed to go out and go. So the man was going out fishing. She wasn't allowed to bathe with the man, because a woman has their own cleansing, body cleansing. So they just don't allow the women to go bathe. Like my dad used to take us down the beach to do the water cleansing. And 6 o'clock in the morning, as boys, and my sister wanted to come along, but he wouldn't allow her to come with us. So, and she was the only girl in the family, so she really wanted to join us with anything we did. And so, but the language is becoming stronger and stronger, because now they're doing it in a day school, and just they're really not saying it directly to the child, but if they're sitting there, they'd be saying different words, and the child will pick it up. And then this child will go home and say this word to their parents, but the parents don't understand. They don't understand our language. But I say that, the parents should come up to our language classes and learn how to speak our language so they can continually teach their children the language.
Is just this massive part of our identity that I feel like was overlooked for a long time due to a lot of traumas people have experienced, throughout history.
with First Nations people who have intergenerational effects from residential school, something that's going to harm them or devalue them or somehow be hurtful to them. They're hypersensitive to it.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The rapid word collection method aims to revolutionize the task of collecting words by using a systematic method to capture these words in a workshop organized in a language community. Words are the building blocks of any communication. They contain information not only about language, but also about culture. Let us return to the conversation to discover more about rapid word collection. But first, Teresa with more words from the Haisla Vocabulary Quick Guide.
Teresa kila sunigwa. Nu trisati. Ex halilas. Ex quelas. Wa. You. Anina. Gas. Jacket. Wisam. Ganam. Wiachla. Op. Ago. D. Abu. Ganams Hunuv. Hatemas.
Teresa and Scott, I want to go back to you guys and just talk a bit about lessons learned. You were both obviously integral in the project with the Haisla, both from a community perspective and organizing community. Maybe start with you, Teresa. What did that take, and what did you learn from that? What are some lessons that you can share with other communities that may want to go down this road that could help them kind of jumpstart and get on the road to a partnership with FNEF?
I think one of the main things to keep in mind is that language work is very, very challenging on an individual level. I think there first and foremost needs to be recognition that there's lots of intergenerational trauma at all ages that people have to work through at an individual level. So having mindfulness and providing safe spaces for those people to allow them to go through those feelings because they are valid, but also acknowledging and recognizing that too is a huge, probably the biggest piece of the puzzle to kind of keep in mind and at the forefront of your mind. But also, there's a lot of methodologies that are out there around language capturing and language revitalization that, are really well, prescribed. But I think initially the thing that really helped moving with FNEF and the relationship was there was actual relationship development that took place outside of a business environment. Scott was always checking in on me saying, hey, how's it going? There was always that check-in, and it felt very personal. It didn't feel scripted. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like I'm here for this one thing, and once I check that box, then we're done. Even beyond me having an official position and role within, language revitalization work, because I'm no longer with Haisla Nation Council, Scott's maintained contact with me and has always kept me in as a part of, the conversation. And, I think it's important for people to always acknowledge and give credit where it's due. There's many entities that will come in and sponsor language revitalization work and maybe without realizing it can often inadvertently tokenize that work, which diminishes a lot of the sacrifices of survivors. There was a lot of trauma that our people endured to hold on to what language and culture we have now. So it's important not to make that error of tokenizing the work that's being done. It's great if you can support it, but you really have to be careful around the language you use when you're identifying that you support that work. And at the ground level, for anyone who wants to start language revitalization work, I think it's important to get to the community and identify where everyone's at. Because like it was mentioned, it can't just be up to one individual. It can't be just up to one group. It has to be a communal effort, and everyone has to be on board with it. Challenges that we faced definitely were around funding, because provincial and federal funding is channeled through this one entity in BC. And with that, there's a lot of restrictions. So one of the biggest and first learning curves for me was trying to apply for that funding and being denied it. And then what to do after that, so it was a big hurdle and challenge to get through, but I was really thankful that I worked with an organization that was always mindful of, the direction we were heading, but also putting me in touch with people that, could help make that work happen. And that's actually how I met Scott, was through networking. And right away, we had set up a meeting. We had a series of meetings before an MOU was finally developed. And the thing that really captured our attention with the process was that at the end of it all, we would have full ownership of the work that we were doing, which in previous times when people have come in and done, orthography work, they're often attached to those people who have done the orthography work. And, sometimes that can really eliminate a lot of the hard work that goes on at the ground level with the fluent speakers. So I was really happy to work with FNEF, because that was a strong message right there, was that we're not here to take over, or we're not here to claim that work and to take, to take that recognition. There was always that acknowledgement there that it was happening at a very grassroots level, and it was the fluent speakers that were making it all happen.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The First Nations Education Foundation collaborates with First Nation governments to develop language revitalization programs for at-risk Indigenous dialects using contemporary educational practices and innovative interactive technology. Let us return the conversation with Director and CEO Scott Jerry. But first, Teresa has more words from the Islak Vocabulary Quick Guide.
Maifla, baba'o, mama'o, anis, bibi'o, manesut, wakwa, heflaka, visams hunu, Lojish, Gig Abua, Gig A Ilinu, Lutmastu, Tufdu, Otstu, Pigstu, Wookstu, Kijwastu, Quiltstu, Katpistu, Kwaelakstu, the quilt stew, kin stew, ojwa stew.
Scott, I'll let you expand on that however you want, because I know there's a lot to unpack in all that, and I know you. But I also, as you think about that, I'd love for you to explore a little bit about the Trinity's involvement and Dr. Larry Hayashi and kind of the linguistics that were brought in, and then we'll get into the ongoing work in a moment. But I'll kick it over to you to unpack some of that, if that's all right.
The first thing, the immediate thing that I think about when you talk about what we've learned, the coolest thing that we learned going through the process with Heisla and Rapid Word Collection was to be able to apply that methodology directly on the land. So you'll see in the film, all this work was done in a very large venue and tables. That's traditionally how it's done. It's very well organized. It's been done for a long time, although not here. That was the first time that method had been applied in British Columbia. But what came out of it is we use semantic domains to stimulate thoughts about things like sky or whatever. And that's to have a community-centric approach as opposed to the Eurocentric approach of saying, how do you say sky in your language, right? We just want you to think about sky and everything to do with it. And that's how you get a real language, real words. And then it just kind of occurred to us with the culture camp that I forget who mentioned that on the film around Ulukan. And so we thought, wow, okay, we should film that. And we would go to the Ulukan culture camp, film the entire thing, talk to the people that had the skill set and the ancient knowledge around how the process worked and catching and processing. And then what we learned on there was the very natural and rich conversation that occurred because it was right there in place on the land. The way that knowledge has always been transferred, not in a classroom, mouth to ear, watching the skill, practicing the skill. And the content was amazing. It achieved the objective of being community-centric. So all of that work it gets tied into a dictionary, all right? And we don't stop there. The dictionary words are interlinearized with all of that film and content. So if someone looks up the word Ulukan, you'll be also drawn to clips of film about that happening and the words being used in context in that community. And the coolest thing of all is now you've got content that curriculum developers and lesson developers can draw from that, again, is specific to the community and the language that can now be brought into the community school where all these kids are. It's pretty cool. So you go from curation to consumption of the language in an organized way in the school, and we find because parents are interested in what their kids are doing, the kids bring that back to the home, and now there's conversation in the language about the activity. So that's a good circle. I forget what else you wanted to know, but I like that part of it, and that's evolved a lot. Several other projects we have on the go are specific to rapid word collection on the land. Very effective.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
A diacritical mark, also known as a diacritic, refers to any mark, shape, stroke, or sign added or attached to a letter for a particular reason. The specific reason for usage of a particular diacritical mark will depend on the mark itself and often which language it's used in. As we close the first part of the special two-part episode, Nelson Grant shares how removing these marks changed the learning process.
Halelas, North Ends, North Ends, Youth Ends, Real Ends, Scapins, Oxy, Column, Exduquia, Halkinu, Mia, Mainichwas, Gigatsok Nugua, Gigakinu Nugua, Hihalkinich Nugua, Miachyanich Nugua, Exduque Enich Nugua, Leistels, Hequalifa, Gigayuila, Jachwilakaos.
Capturing the language is one piece, but that's not the end, right? So let's explore the educational component. I know, Nelson, that's been a part of your journey, helping others learn the language and teaching it. And so maybe let's just talk about the next steps. And you touched on it already to some degree, but let's talk about what it looks like in the community today around education and what the hope is for the future of this digitized language that's now exists.
With this program that we had in Kitimat, with learning how to get rid of the, what is it called, those little marks, phonetics. Anyway, we learned to write the language, how we hear it, and how it comes to us, and without using all those little marks. I sort of found that, like, you're reading that old dictionary that the linguists, it was just like a different language to me. Now I can sit there and take this dictionary, open it, and find a word, and I could read it. It's not, and like I said, we don't use all those little markings and whatever they are, and it's helping a lot of people to get into this dictionary and finding words that they can actually read, and it's making our people learn faster. Because they can read it. You know, me, I was brought up speaking a language I didn't, because our language was never written. And a lot of us, our language was never written. So we just learned it mouth to ear. And so with this program, we've had 2 of them. The first one, they wanted 10,000 words. And then with the second one, it built up, and actually they wanted 30,000 words. But it takes a while just to go through. And going through this program here that we did, we had an elder sitting at each table and going through the words from that old dictionary, or they give us a piece of paper with writing about hurricanes, about hunting, about guns, about, fishing, and the names of all these things. So we had to translate that from English into Christ, and it takes a long time. Takes a long time to translate English into Christ. There's a lot of words that we can't use in English when there's an English word and there's no word in Christ that we could use in our language. So what we would do is more or less try to make up a word for the language. So I think that really helped a lot of people, was helping a lot of people doing the language, because it's done in a different way.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.